Alright, have some time to kill before catching the train to school. So, in this early morning, approximately 5 a.m., I'm going to hit you with the Strikeforce San Jose card, Diaz versus Cyborg prediction video. Wasn't really planning on doing a prediction video for this event because of the lack of breakdown to the fights almost. Unfortunately, the issue with Strikeforce is that while they do have some very good fighters, they don't have the ability to match up a fighter to a fighter very often, and that's what keeps them largely behind the OC. Is that the OC has the depth of divisions, not necessarily the top end talent, although they do for the most part have top end talent advantage over Strikeforce. But I'm highlighting UFC Strikeforce differences. Let's just get on to the card. Nothing really interesting on the undercard. A couple of good up and coming fighters, say Nathan Coy, James Terry's still a guy I have a little faith in. Bobby Stack is another guy, but they're not fighting people that really make me want to talk about them. So we'll just go to the main card. All right, Trevor Prangley versus Roger Gracie or Roger Gracie. Gracie, we know what he brings to the table, ADCC champion. Very good fighter in general. He brings an amazing ground game to the table, improving striking, and a reasonably high level of athleticism. Also a very tall guy at 6'3", and not very tall, but a tall guy. Still for 205, maybe not, but he's a reasonably tall guy, a reasonably lanky guy. Trevor Prangley, a little bit the opposite, more short compact, although 6'2", he's not actually that short. He's getting older, training with AKA, of course, in San Jose. We know what he's about too. Well-rounded skills, primarily a wrestling base, but good boxing, good kickboxing in general. I would say more good boxing. He doesn't really utilize the kick aspect of kickboxing so much. We've seen in the past that good wrestling can, take out good grappling, but Gracie's grappling is just on this complete other level. And Prangley can be sloppy at times. Go check out Phantom UFC Fan. He goes a little bit more in depth in this, but footwork's a bit sloppy. Takedowns are a bit sloppy at times. He makes mistakes, kind of just little mental errors, which you can't make against Roger Gracie. Or anyone with that level of skill. So I've been going back and forth in the fight thinking, can Prangley basically do either the sprawl and brawl or the takedown and control game and win a decision? Or Prangley does have a lot of KO power. Does he, tag Gracie and put him in? The issue is that Gracie was able to handle a very good wrestler in Kevin Randleman, who, despite his lengthy personal MMA-related, steroid-related problems, is a very explosive, very solid wrestler, and Prangley doesn't really have that explosive level to him at this point. I think at some point, probably in the third round, this fight will go to the ground. I think it may go to the ground before then as Prangley tries to solidify some rounds with some takedowns at the end. But in the third round, I'm thinking this goes to the ground. Gracie either catches him in an armbar or a triangle choke on the ground. And that is my thought on the matter. And that's what I'm going with at this second. Of course, once I finish filming the video, might change my mind. Herschel Walker, Scott Carson. Scott Carson is a guy who fought way back in the day. San Luis Bo has a link to Chuck Liddell. I believe he trained at the Pit. Could be wrong on that. Good all-around skills, but at the age of 40, had some back problems. Not a big guy at heavyweight, which this fight is. It's another somewhat gimme fight for Herschel Walker, and I'm not criticizing this. People are going to jump on it and say, well, what do you expect him to fight? I expect him to fight somewhat gimme fights. He's a celebrity fighter. He's in his second career fight. I don't think many people fight much better than Scott Carson in their second career fight. But Herschel, should have the advantage on an athletic department. He's a little bit bigger than Carson, I think, at least according to, weigh-ins you can see. I don't really know what Carson looks like at this point, but I can't imagine if he is bigger than his previous weight that it's a good thing. I see Herschel just being able to do, take him down if he needs to, strike with him a little bit. Again, Herschel's a guy who apparently picks up things very quickly, so we may even see, a lot improving on him. But, the win won't mean a ton. He'll come out there, he'll probably win a decision over Scott Carson. So, Herschel Walker, unanimous decision. Jacare versus Robbie Lawler. You, of course, have the classic striker-grappler matchup. Jacare, if this goes to the ground, will submit Robbie Lawler. Mark my words, he's an amazing, amazing grappler, and Robbie Lawler, makes mistakes on the ground and doesn't have the greatest ground ability. That being said, he's got some takedown defense. He can try and keep this on the feet for a while. He's got very, very nasty KO power. This for the middleweight championship, of course, which I believe makes it a 5-round fight. At some point, though, I got to say that I see Jacare being able to get this down. Jacare is not like your typical BJJ guy who has weak wrestling. Jacare has very good wrestling and mixes in some judo takedowns as well. I see him being able to get Lawler down, probably second round, and submit him probably with a choke of some form. So, Jacare, second round submission, probably via a choke. Nick Diaz versus Evangelista Cyborg Santos. Cyborg looked a lot better in his recent fight with Zamrauskas than we've seen in a while. He's coming down in weight from where he was. He's fought as high as, of course, 205, and he's now fighting at 170. It seems to have gotten his cardio in check, but, you still look at fighting at Nick Diaz. Despite the fact that Cyborg's a black belt, it doesn't show, and it never really has. I see Diaz being able to come out there. He's got to be a little careful because that big shot can come, but I see him being able to, work his pitter-patter kind of boxing style. Throws your timing off considerably. Not a lot of power, but volume of punches does hurt. Cyborg's chin, not the greatest. His knockout losses are to, good power punchers, but we've seen in the past that Nick Diaz's style of pitter-patter can equal a big knockout punch. He can come out there. I think he can disrupt Cyborg's timing. Has the reach advantage being about 3 inches taller and considerably lankier. So I think he actually has more than a 3-inch reach advantage. Comes out. He'll be able to disrupt the timing. If it goes to the ground, Diaz all the way. Diaz is a legitimate black belt. I don't want to say Cyborg isn't a legitimate black belt, but it doesn't show in the cage, in the ring. Doesn't show when he goes in there. He may be amazing in the gym. I don't know. Diaz probably will get him down at some point. I'm going to say third round. Cyborg starts to get a little tired, which is later than usual for him. He usually gets tired in the first round, but at 170 his cardio seems a little better. So I'm going to say third round, gets a little tired, ends up on the ground. Diaz catches him in something, submits him. I'm going to say a rear naked choke, and retains his title along with Jacare. Hopefully fights Mayhem Miller, although I don't think so. Diaz wants Miller to come down to 170 for those of you who don't know, and for those of you who saw the GSP versus Jason Mayhem Miller fight at 170 in the UFC, know why it's really probably a bad idea for Jason Mayhem Miller to come down to 170. If you watch the fight, you'll look at Mayhem and it doesn't look like a healthy guy. It looks like a guy who, is cutting too much weight. And Diaz is a man who has been talking some crap about Mayhem. If it was just Mayhem talking stuff about Diaz, I would entirely agree that, the fight doesn't, have to happen and so on. You don't have to go up in weight, et cetera, et cetera. But you got to at least catch weight this thing if you really wanted to make it happen. I would say 180. Because Mayhem is a small 185er. He can go down. He's kind of one of these guys who doesn't really, have a weight class. He kind of kills himself making 170. and he's kind of small at 185. And that's kind of how that works. Got a little time left, so I'm going to touch on a topic that's been brought up. Maybe it's a little bandwagon jumping. But I didn't want to make a full video about it because I don't think I have enough to say. And that is the topic of racism in MMA. Karsten, the MMA analyst, brought it up. And a number of other people have done quality video responses to it. Go check those out. Just look at the video. There's a couple of links. But this is the way I look at it. I don't particularly see it as a racial thing. Karsten brings up that, you do tend to like what is like you. And there is truth to that, but I don't necessarily think that it is so much racism, because I think that has a lot to do with attitude. For example, he brought up that Melvin Gillard's going to get hated on because he is Melvin Gillard, not because of anything he's done. Melvin Gillard has done some things that I don't agree with, and I don't recall him ever really apologizing for them, and he continues to do things I don't really agree with. If he was a white guy, it would be the same. Because, for example, Michael Bisping, I don't particularly agree with his trash talk either. The British fans love it, and that's all the more power to them. But I personally don't care for it. I mean, there is a certain gravitation towards fighters that you can relate to, but that's not necessarily, it's not all white fighters for me. It's not that I don't relate to any of the black fighters. It's not that I don't appreciate any Brazilian fighters. I'm speaking for me, and I'm sure there are people that are racist out there, but I don't think it's a big problem in MMA, particularly when it comes down to it. Does it particularly matter if the fans like you, if the promotion is going to give you your due anyways? Is a question I would like to throw out there, because Gillard has been kept on contract, using Melvin as an example because he's the one that kind of prompted this. He's been kept on contract, not been cut, despite the fans generally not liking him. So, does it really matter if there are some racist fans out there, and I think it's in the minority personally, that will never like Melvin because he's a black fighter, because of, this, that, and the other? Doesn't matter. He's still getting paid. He will, I think, if he wins one more fight in impressive fashion against a top-ranked opponent, he could very well actually be looking at a title shot. I think calling for a title shot after beating Evan Dunham, who, was robbed in the Shirk fight and everything, still lost the Shirk fight, is too much. But if you put him in there with, say, Kenny Florian's coming off a loss. That was the name that came to mind, though. I don't know. Someone doesn't really come to mind, but someone coming off a win, someone high ranked, etc., who's kind of in the title picture. If he goes out there and he scores an impressive win over them, he will probably get a title shot, and that's his due. So I'm submitting that I don't think it's necessarily a racial problem. It's that you are always going to relate better to people like you. Skin color is part of that, but I don't think it's all that. I think it's a personality thing. And, Karsten did bring up, Chael Sonnen. I don't see a lot of support for Chael Sonnen. A lot of what it is troll attempts and people who are hyper Republican and do relate to Chael Sonnen. And he's talked about Chris Lieben and Phil Baroni. Dude, no one's a fan of Phil Baroni. No one forgives Phil Baroni for the trash talk he talks. No one. Chris Lieben, I don't even think is overly, forgiving either. You look at a conversation in Skype between, me and, a couple of the other YouTube MMA guys, and you get, we do joke about, his substance abuse. We don't like Lieben. We enjoy watching him fight. We don't like the person, though. And that's kind of really all I have to say on the matter is, try to keep perspective on, for one thing, what matters, and for one thing, what it might be. Don't necessarily jump to the racial motivator. Anyways, that's all I have to say, so peace out.